What's going on, boys and girls? Welcome back to another episode of Bunk Bed Breakdowns, your featured weekly film featuring yours truly and the homie FB God Noah. I don't know if you guys can tell if I have bags under my eyes. It definitely feels like I'm wearing some bags under my eyes. Money bags though, because Noah and I've been just fucking grinding NBA Top Shots nonstop for like the past month or so.
I would say my
We're
sleep schedule is messed up, but I don't really have one anymore. It's just
yeah,
always
I don't
available.
have a sleep schedule anymore. I mean, I keep tweeting the Matthew McConaughey meme, and that's literally like me every night, just staring at my laptop screen. Team no sleep. But I mean, it's been fun. Noah, before we get into today's main content, how are you doing, man?
I think, a lot of people know how I'm doing. I've been off Twitter a little bit, not because I hate Twitter, which I do, but just other things going on in life that are a little more lucrative than Twitter, hopefully will be. This is not a nod at it being financial advice. Just want to put that out there. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Top Shot stuff. We'll have content coming out later in the week about Top Shot. You guys can watch it there. I'm not going to bore you talking about what we will talk about. You can just watch it there. It's a whole lot of fun. If you like playing Dynasty Fantasy Football, which you're here watching because you do like Dynasty and you're into basketball, it kind of brings in the Dynasty and also kind of a DFS type of standpoint to it. So if you're interested in potentially making some returns, because we don't know if it's legit or not yet, and you like basketball, it's a really fun thing to spend 15 hours a day doing. And I've had a great time wasting away, inside, outside, family life, relationships, everything is deteriorating, but the bank account might be looking pretty soon.
Yeah, it's imagine a dynasty and DFS combined, except your player prices move every day. So like let's say you get in a DFS salary on like, Patrick Mahomes at like, 5,000, next day it's 10,000, you sell out, and then you wait 2 weeks later and then 7,000 you buy back in. And then imagine that 24/7 all day, every day, live markets. You have trade
Imagine
partners.
Justin Jefferson's entire rookie season was encapsulated in one day, and the value jump he had from July to December happened in the span of 12 hours, and that's what the market is every 10 minutes.
Yeah, so yeah, it's pretty fun. But we won't bore you with that. We haven't forgotten about the dynasty content because we're out here doing that. You saw me put out a big 2 hour long interview with Drew Ozenchuk at DFB Encounter from the Bulletproof Process. So if you guys haven't checked that out, make sure you go back to the Monday video and check that out. It's a long one. It's a Lord of the Rings special 2 hour series. So make sure you set off a nice block of time for that. But yeah, we haven't forgot about you guys, man. We are still in the dynasty game, and we are about to, kind of head into peak dynasty startup season. And during peak dynasty startup season, you know, there's going to be a lot of startups, and there's going to be a lot of startups on the Patreon, over at Big Dogs Discord. Sign up. Noah and I will be grinding those for you guys. So what do we want to do for you guys? We want to give you a little bit of an evergreen video. We kind of did one last year, but Noah and I have played in a couple more leagues now, and every year is different. So we want to think about new ways to kind of just give you some tips. Like, I don't want to call it like rules because there's really no hard rules to go by, but just tips and guidance on how to start a dynasty league, how to run a successful dynasty league, how to avoid some of the major pain points that guys like Noah and myself experienced when we first started. Just kind of show you guys the light, and but before we do that, man, Noah, you know what time it is. All right, so we'll kind of just go through, some do's and don'ts. I think, the first thing I always tell people to go through though is you gotta, if you're gonna join a league, right? I don't know how you do this, no, but I make an assessment of like the commissioner that's like commissioning that league, right? Because a good commissioner is great, but a bad commissioner will totally shit on your entire time and just destroy your fun because they won't be engaged. They won't like do anything. Like being a commissioner is fucking hard work. How do I know? Because I commission like 3 or 4 leagues, and you got to deal with a bunch of shit and a lot of stuff that comes up. So it's like it's a tireless job, but like not many people want to do it, and people that think they want to do it, once they get into it, they realize they really don't want to do it. And like me, like I hate commissioning. I do it because I like the game, but what I do is I'd really try and gauge, what the commissioner is like. Like, are they organized? Like, are they like into this thing? Like, how many leagues are they in? If your commissioner is in like 50 leagues, red flag. major red flag, because I promise you they do not have the attention span to kind of pay attention to like all those leagues, especially if they're multiple league commissioners. So step one for everyone that I always say is to kind of like make your assessment of the commissioner, and what you think of that.
Yeah, and it's always tough with the Discord because it is a random grouping of 12 people. And the way the commissioner is picked is basically whoever sets up the league is the commissioner. And how we do it is, you set up your league, you buy in, you set everything up, and we'll get through how you set all that stuff up. But you don't have to buy in until you talk with these people. If you feel like you won't either get along with these people and the league won't last because you guys don't mesh, personalities clash, or if you feel like whoever the commissioner is who set it up isn't responsible enough or isn't um, seasoned enough, I guess you could say, in Dynasty, you can send me a message. Hey, can you take me out of this chat? I don't want to be in here. We'll remove you. And then maybe I'll talk to the commissioner and run by them. Like, I can't check every single commissioner. I can't check every single person when it happens. But if there's enough complaints, I'll go out there and I'll ask maybe if there can be a changing of the guard, if there can be someone who steps down and somebody else steps up. But as you were saying, right, commissioners are kind of the glue that holds everything together. They're the people that you don't want to give respect because they kind of rule with an iron fist sometimes. But at the end of the day, they're the reason why your league runs year after year. Mike is I think you're commissioner of like one or two of my leagues. I hate you, Mike, for being a commissioner. You're the reason why it works sometimes. So yeah, it's an unforgiving role to be one, but it also has a lot of respect that's tied to it. And for me personally, I don't have too much trouble with it because all the leagues I'm in, it's either you, me, or Scott commissioning, or Nick. So I know the people, I know who's in the league as well. I would just say if you're not in a league with your friends or you're not in a league where you know every single person, just make the assessment of who the commissioner is before you get in, because obviously nobody wants to like drop out of the league and be like, 2 weeks in, I'm in the middle of the startup, give me my money back. Like, I don't want to be a part of it. Nobody wants to be that guy. So just get out ahead of it and make sure that you can fit in with who's in your league as well.
Yeah. And if you're trying to get into leagues, right, and they're strangers, and you don't know them, like one litmus test that I use myself like a lot of time is like, do they have bylaws? And if the leagues that I'm in with like Noah and Nick, like we all know each other, so we kind of just resolve shit as we go, and that's fine. But like in all my leagues, I drafted like bylaws, and they're pretty extensive. And the reason why I have them is like, when someone joins the league, I'm like, hey, here are the bylaws, read them. If you join, you sign up to all of this, so that there's very few disagreements down the line. It's like, oh, hey, like, how come I couldn't do this? I'm like, it was in the fucking bylaws. You should have read
Yeah,
it.
it's
Like,
not like
hey,
the Apple terms and conditions where you basically sign away your life. It's literally just like running through the league strategy and not the league strategy, but the league settings.
yeah,
And you're not signing away your life by doing it. It just basically gives you an outline. Oh, the third round is a third round reversal. Oh, you can't trade your draft picks until you pay in for that year. It's very simple stuff that is worth reading. It's not too lengthy from what I've
yeah,
seen in our leagues. In the BBB league, I know you put that out there. It's not lengthy. It's super helpful, and it'll avoid you asking a lot of questions. It's like when a college professor gives you a syllabus, and then the second day of class, somebody asks when's the first exam, and it's right there, like in bold on the first page. They're kind of annoyed by you asking it. If you ask like, oh, can we trade a 2027 pick? Just be like, read like line 2 of the entire
yeah.
thing, and it's right there.
Yeah, and it really helps with like really like gray area stuff. Like sometimes you'll get into a league, right, and then like nobody talks about how draft order is determined, and then like you get to the end of the season and we're like, hey, like who gets the first draft pick? That's like one of the peak problems that I've seen in some leagues. Like they didn't define that. It's like, hey, is it by win loss? Is it by potential points? Is it by blah blah? Like, hey, this guy's tanking. So we'll go through some of those like different rules and settings as well. But the overarching theme is like if you have it written down and people sign up for it as a commissioner and as league mates, it's very easy to go back and kind of go back and look and test that and check that. And it's not like you sign up for bylaws and never change, right? Like I've changed rules in my bylaws before because once we've like played a season out, maybe things don't go according to plan and you may need to make some changes on the fly, and you take a vote. But as long as you define a process of how that vote works, then you don't have those arguments down the line. Like, hey, is it a majority vote? Is it a simple majority? Can the commissioner vote? Like, there's all these different types of things, like all these little nuances. And the more detailed the bylaws are, like the less headache down the line. So that's just like a good litmus test. If you're about to sign a league with strangers, even if you're not going to sign up with leagues with like big dogs, right? Like if you go on Twitter and about to sign a league and it's some random guy that you never met before, and you ask him for bylaws and he says no, big red flag. Like I would not join a league like that because it's going to be a hassle down the line for you. I promise that.
100%. Yeah. And I think we can start going into like how a league actually processes. Like, what's the first steps? You do a startup before the NFL draft, you do a startup after the NFL draft. And from experience doing both, I have a lot more fun. Actually, I have an equal amount of fun. You can do it before the startup draft and you draft kickers in replacement for rookie picks because obviously 2 years ago in a startup draft, Hakeem Butler may have been like a seventh round pick. The guy becomes a fourth round pick in real life. Like you're not spending a fourth round pick in a startup on a guy who wasn't spent a fourth round pick on in an NFL draft. So because there is risk there, and I'm sure unless you're super risk tolerant, you don't want to do that. You can draft kickers in replacement for rookie picks. So like the fifth kicker picked off the board is the 105. You go in later and you
Yeah.
reassign picks based off that. So that is
Before
kind of
you sorry, before you get into the combined rookie drafts, just so it's clear for like the viewers who haven't done a startup draft before. Basically, like you can draft veterans, right? And that's like people that are in the NFL. And a big part of Dynasty is like rookies, so the incoming rookie class. Now there's different ways to handle it. One way is the way that we prefer, which is what Noah was talking about, having like a combined draft with both rookies and vets. But I've seen other people do it where they do separate drafts. So like, you'll draft the startup draft, which has all the veterans in it, and then you do a separate draft for the rookies, and like whoever gets the 101 in the startup gets like the 112 in the rookie draft, for example. And that's the most basic one that I've seen people go to, and that's a huge mistake. That's a huge mistake because the rookie draft, like 1.01, is like basically a startup pick, is like Trevor Lawrence and Superflex, for example. So having that like reverse order draft is not great. The best way to do it and the most equitable way to do it is just to have a combined draft. And like Noah was saying, if you're doing it before the NFL draft, you don't want to draft players because you don't know landing spots. What you want to do is draft slots. So like instead of drafting Trevor Lawrence, you would draft the 1.01 in your draft, and that's like represented by a kicker if you're doing it on sleeper, or if you're doing it on MFL or something like that. You can actually just have the rookie pick itself. So just to clarify, those are different methods. Like do not join drafts that have reverse order rookie draft, startup draft. Like the reverse order of the startup draft as the rookie draft, and separate drafts. Do not do that. I promise you, I guarantee you will regret it. It's the first mistake I made when I first started playing Dynasty. It was the year Saquon Barkley got drafted, and I joined a draft like that. And the guy who got the rookie 101 just basically got a free first round startup pick in Saquon Barkley, and then whoever got 101 got fucked because he got like the 112. So it's definitely a little bit of a nuance, and you're gonna have that same issue this year. So do not put yourself through the pain.
Yeah, if you were to do that this year, you could realistically land at the 112, like Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, and just have three top five, top six, top seven dynasty quarterbacks right off the bat. That's going to be tough for the rest of your league mates. So there is not much equity in doing that way. I'm fine either drafting before the rookie draft and picking those rookie slots because the value does change a little bit. But at the end of the day, like the 102, the player may change, but the value of the 102 is probably going to stay pretty similar. So if you guys are anxious and you want to draft the vets as well, even before free agency, even before seeing landing spots, like obviously players can take a hit because of the draft, because a new running back comes into the fold. Like Devin Singletary was being hyped because he was the only show in town. Zach Moss comes in, he dropped down. Turns out both of them sucked. So there is that risk by getting in at that point. I personally kind of like doing it after the NFL draft because you know the landing spots, you know how the landing spots affect veterans as well as how it affects a rookie's value as well. But if you were to do a draft post draft, I would say anytime past May or June so that people in your league can also just like consume the content around what happened. They can kind of dig in because most people, I'm sure if you're watching this video 2 years from when this was recorded and you're getting super into Dynasty, you're probably not out there scouting rookies in January and February. You want that time to go in afterwards and kind of learn about who they are as prospects so you have time to understand where to pick them in your startup draft.
Yeah, I think if you guys are followers of us, bunk bed breakdowns, you're gonna have an advantage of drafting early. Like whoever knows the most is gonna benefit more from drafting early, versus those draft later, because you're gonna know who to target. Like you're gonna know, for example, like last year in February, you would have known to target Antonio Gibson, right? So if you follow us and you kind of get on this content wave, and you really want to get into Dynasty, I would recommend trying to push your league to do a draft in like basically May, like right after the actual NFL draft. But if you can't, then yeah, June's good too. And through May through August, it's gonna be like an insane amount of startups going through. One piece of advice there is just don't hop in too many, man. Like in my first year, I think I maybe did like 3 or 4, and then I started upping the bounty as I started to learn more and play more. But sometimes I see people like going to like 20 or like 10 their first year, and guaranteed you're just gonna create a bunch of orphans because you're going to make mistakes, right? And it's better to make mistakes in a couple of leagues than to make the same mistakes 10 times and then like be that asshole that leaves all your leagues so your team freaking stinks.
Yeah,
Um,
don't be the Genghis Khan of Dynasty. Don't leave that many orphans. You got to have some father children out there. You got to keep them around. I've run into that problem too. Sometimes I get into a lot of leagues. I haven't dropped any yet, so a little pat on my own back, but I'm like 10 leagues deep. I'm like, damn, do I really have to make the decision if I want to start Corey Davis or Julian Edelman in week 7 anymore? Nah, probably not, but I'm going to hold through and see what happens and hopefully reap
yeah,
the rewards of it. But also just speaking on leagues where you don't know the people in them, Mike, what do you use as a third party to collect payment? Like, obviously, if you're in a league with
yeah,
one of us and you feel like you can trust us with your money, first off, you're
mistake,
crazy. Second
fucking
off,
mistake.
second off, if you can do that, then just Venmo the guy. Or if it's like a home league, you obviously know how to do that. But if you're in a league with a bunch of random people that you find through Reddit or a Discord or Twitter, what would you recommend
Yeah.
as the payment collection?
So I use Safe Leagues. So that's like the main one that I use. I know some people use Team Stake. Not a big fan of Team Stake myself. I use Safe Leagues because it's easy to kind of like just process. I have a balance in there already. I think when you take it out, you can do e-check or you can like take like a little bit of a hit to do it direct wire transfer out, which doesn't matter that much when you're winning as many championships as Noah and I are. But if you aren't, then I honestly I think safe leagues is the way to go. Like that's my first choice, and a little bit of a life hack for safe leagues. So if you're going directly through safe leagues, you try and pay using your credit card, they will charge you like a 5% fee up front, right? And the way to get around that is you use that credit card, the same credit card that you would have paid for the league, but go to Fanball, right? Fanball is like the parent company of safe leagues, but Fanball offers like gambling and all that stuff. So if you use credit card to deposit in Fanball, there's no fee. You can just like deposit $300 and it shows up in your like Fanball balance as dollars, right? And then when you go to safe leagues, if you use your dollar balance to pay, no 5% fee. So there you go. Boom. You sign up for our channel, you subscribe to us. I just saved you 5% of your money. Is that a Geico commercial? It's probably a Geico commercial. Sounds like a Geico
Well, you're
commercial.
not sponsored by Safe Leagues or the other name that you just put out there. But yeah, that helped me a lot because I think if you don't sign up through that way, it charges you. But I also think there's like a wait period. It was like something that happened
Yeah.
last year. And I remember you told me about that. So we fixed that in the Discord. We switched the main payment method through there.
Yeah. So that's the way I would go. And then make sure you guys use like a majority approval, right? So that you don't give the commissioner. Make sure when you sign up, it doesn't say like commissioner like full control or whatever, because if it's some random you don't trust, he could just take that money and run. Now I don't think there's that many of those guys in the BDGE Discord, but you can never be too safe. So make sure it's majority approval for payouts, because what that means is when it comes time to payout, and you guys have a payout structure already like listed out. He just has to pay that out to the names, and everyone votes. And as soon as enough people vote, then the money gets distributed. So you don't get like can't con of your money. So that's key. And I think it's not as clear on the team stake side. I know some people last year were like, oh shit, I signed up for a league and it's all commissioner like control. I couldn't tell. I didn't know. I'm like, all right, well, one, that's a stupid mistake on your part. But two, just go to safe leagues. It's super clear. It says it right there, commissioner for control. If you're in leagues with me, I have commissioner full control just because like my payout structure is super wacky, and I'm not going to steal your money. But yeah, if you're playing with strangers, make sure you have majority vote.
Yeah, and I know Scott's going crazy right now, like investing in crypto and investing in Bitcoin and all this stuff. So I'm not recommending this. They put their $1,200 pot because they trust Scott to not run away with the money. They put their $1,200 pot in Bitcoin. They might be putting in Top Shot as well, letting it accrue value, and then the pot at the end of the year goes from 1,200 to 2,500 to 3,000 to 10,000. So if you're in a home league and it's kind of like a throwaway league and you want to put $650 per person for 12 people, you want to put that in a Kevin Durant card and then cash out and see what happens. That'd be pretty cool, but I would say that's probably way too risky if you are in a league with a bunch of random. So if you go out there and propose that, you better have a lot of faith that these 11 other people you've never seen before are not going to run away with your 1,200. Like, yeah, sure, this money could become 50 grand, but if I lose the league, nothing's coming to my pockets. Pause.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can move on from the whole payment
Yeah.
side of things as well.
Yeah, it's super cool. I mean, I big fan of like when Scott like came up with that idea. I thought that was like genius, to be honest. Especially if you started in the beginning of the cryptoverse. But like Noah said, it's got to be with people you trust. So
Mhm.
that's kind of like the payment side, and it's really important to get that side down, because one, you don't want to get scammed of your money, but two, like if you have it set up properly, it's just like so much easier down the line to deal with. You don't have to worry about it. All right. Now let's talk a little bit about roster settings. I think, for those of you that are new to Dynasty, it's going to be very different, right? In your redraft leagues, you're used to like what, like a 15 round draft, maybe, like maybe if
Mhm.
you're getting real risky, getting real deep there, maybe like an 18 round draft. Not the case for Dynasty, right? For Dynasty, waiver wires is basically non-existent. Like, once in a while you get like a unicorn, like a James Robinson's available on the waiver wire. But for the most part, Dynasty waivers are dead. Like, because what happens is people have like 30 size rosters, right? So you're talking about like 30 rounds in the draft. Like, I don't know if you how many of you out there can name like 300 players that you can draft. Probably not many of you, but that's how deep Dynasty is. And the reason why you have that is because you need like the deeper benches. And you're holding these players. And a lot of the times you're drafting players that don't really produce early on, like rookies and stuff. So it's like that's why the rosters are deep. And playing in shallow Dynasty rosters is kind of like not that much fun, right? It's really about the reason why waivers are shallow and there's not much on the waivers because it encourages trading, right? Dynasty is all about trading. So the deeper the dynasty rosters, that means if you need a player, you can't go to the waivers and pick someone up to start for you. You have to go and find trade partners, and that's really the key and crux of it. So if you're setting up like rosters for dynasty, I don't know what your favorite settings are, no, but I typically like to have at least 10 starters in a starting lineup. Sometimes 11, sometimes 12. I'm playing like a double tight end league or something like that. But if you're just starting off the basics, right, I would say super flex. That's what we're all about in big dogs. So you got a quarterback, super flex, a super flex spot, two running backs, three wide receivers, a tight end, and usually one or two flex spots. So
Mhm.
that's usually what I'm looking at for the starting lineup. And then your total roster size should really be about like 2.5 times whatever the starting roster is. So if you have 10 starting lineup, you should at least have a 25 size roster. All right. And then if you have a 12 starting lineup, you should at least have like more than that. So, 25 to 30 rosters is usually where we land. Like I don't know, what do you like leagues bigger than that, or do you like leagues shallower than that?
Yeah, I'm usually in leagues with 30 to 35 total spots. Now, there's also a thing called taxi squad spots, which we'll get into later, and there's obviously IR spots. Sometimes it amazes me. Somebody will be like, "Should I pick up Justin Herbert off the waiver wire in my one QB dynasty league?" Like, I get it's one QB, but it's Justin Herbert, and that's no
Yeah.
slight because I'm a Chargers fan. But if you have a league where you don't need to roster Justin Herbert, I question if it's even dynasty because you think about this as like kind of a real life building a franchise type of thing. A guy like Justin Herbert, who has top five quarterback potential, shouldn't be sitting on your waiver wire. And if you're watching this video 5 years from now, he's probably an MVP player. So you're like, why would anybody ever have Justin Herbert on the waiver wire? So yeah, I'm in every league I'm in has super, super deep starting rosters. No, not starting rosters, but rosters overall. Like you look at the waiver wire, the top guys every single league is probably like Danny Amendola in terms of weekly projection. It's like 3.4 points, and he's a 35-year-old white slot receiver. Nobody's looking for him. So yeah, I'm about there with like super deep rosters overall. As far as taxi squad goes, I'm usually between 3 to 5 spots, and a taxi squad is basically NFL practice squad. It's guys who, in their first or second year, you put them on there in their first year. You hold them for up to 2 years. Once those 2 years are over, you can decide to keep them on your roster or cut them to make space for guys in that rookie draft. It's basically a way to make speculative ads on guys who have little to no upside or a lot of upside but a lot of downside. So a guy like James Robinson, right? If you weren't drafting him, but you got him in free agency after your rookie draft, you put him in your taxi squad. Worst case scenario, he does nothing for 2 years, you dump him. Best case scenario, he becomes a top five running back, you put him in, you promote him from your taxi squad, and once the season starts and he's promoted from your taxi squad to your regular roster, he cannot go back to your taxi squad. So it's a little bit different than a redraft league, which has none of that. But when you have 30 guys deep, you might want to stash 5 guys who are speculative ads, in hopes that they eventually blossom into something that isn't Nikhil Harry.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, it's like it's a developmental slot, so it doesn't like count against your roster, and encourages you to take shots on high upside young players that aren't productive, right? They're not going to start for you. And I think the best way to use taxi squads, the way that I use them, is I use them to stash like wide receivers, right? Like last year, like I had Darnell Mooney on every single one of my taxi squads, and I never took him off because I didn't really need him to start for me. But obviously he's accrued value, so it's like someone that's accruing value on your roster without actually taking up a roster slot, especially during COVID times, was like super clutch. So wide receivers is probably the best time to do it. And the way to set up the taxi squad is to not I think a lot of people sometimes have like free taxi squads where you can just like basically like swap rookies in and out throughout the year. At that point, you might as well just add an extra roster slot. It makes no sense. But the way the taxi squads typically work and how I use them is you have to put the player on the taxi squad before the season starts. And once you take them off, you can never put them back on. So if you take them off and you put them in your starting lineup 1 week, that's it. You can't like that guy's contributed to your team. You cannot put him back on this year. You cannot put him on next year. But if you truly use it in its true purpose and you never take them off, you can hold it, like Noah said, up to 2 years. And once they're 2 years, they still stink. If they're Henry Ruggs, drop them, right? Like if they're Van Jefferson,
That's
drop
tough. Henry Ruggs, people can watching this down the line like,
them.
man, that guy's a Hall of Famer. Those Randy Moss comps paid off.
A tough scene. But yeah, I think that's the best way to use taxi squads. And then IR is pretty self-explanatory. It's the same thing. I think the only nuance we had this past season with COVID was, usually you only have like 1 or 2, maybe 3 spots for IR. A lot of my leagues, I expanded that to like 5 or 6 so that people could account for COVID, so they didn't have to like drop players off their roster just because people got put on COVID IR or whatever. Hopefully that won't be around next year. Maybe it will. I don't know. Some people tell me this shit's going to be here forever, so we'll see. And if it does, then we can adjust. But for the most part, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I think that's kind of all we had for the roster part. I think the next part, which we can talk about real quick. Oh, before we move on, actually, one point we forgot was the draft itself. We didn't mention if you're in a, if you're in a redraft league, chances are you're on like a 30-second timer for your draft picks.
Mhm.
In Dynasty, you want to play slow drafts. So slow drafts, they call them email draft because that's probably how the boomers did it back in the day. They drafted by email, but now you have like sleeper. And usually what I'll do is I'll set like an 8-hour clock, which means that everyone has 8 hours to take to make a pick. And like off the jump, that sounds really stupid and really long, but nobody like, I mean, not nobody, some people do, but most people don't take 8 hours to make a pick because when everyone's fucking excited, they want to get picks going. But the reason why you want 8 hours is because one, not everyone's a freaking degenerate like us that just like think, talk, breathe fantasy football all day long. They have like jobs, they have lives, they have kids, they
Yeah,
have
these lame
parents,
people
they
have
have
jobs and families. Who are they?
they got jobs and families. So you got to give them time. But the most important part of it is you can trade your picks, right? And we'll talk about that part next, which is really important. But you can trade picks when you're in the startup. You can trade your future rookie picks. So you want to give people time to make those negotiations and have those talks because that is the best part of Dynasty by far. So don't do any quick draft Dynasty. It's freaking stupid because it completely negates the most fun of Dynasty. But also, like, don't be the guy that just milks the clock and sits there and wait for offers when no offers coming because fucking Todd Gurley's on the draft in like the 15th round. Like, just make the pick. You know what I mean? So there's a balance to strike, but make sure you do take part in slow drafts. So 8 hour slow clock is my go-to. If you really want to push it, a 4 hour slow clock could work too. But also make sure you have like an overnight timer so that people can actually go to fucking sleep. I don't know who sleeps anymore with Top Shot out there. I don't sleep personally, but for those of the people that do sleep, you can have like a 10-hour clock when it's like midnight or like 10 p.m. to like 8 a.m. or something, right? The clock is off. You can still make trades and make picks, but the clock is off. And the way to do that on sleeper, unfortunately, is a little bit manual. You have to get your commissioner to go in and just like shut off the draft clock, like make it no draft timer, and then turn the draft timer back on when people are up. But other than that, the slow draft itself is actually a really fun way to do it.
Yeah, especially in the Discord as well, where people are in Ireland and Australia. Like people are in different time zones. Mike and I are 3 hours apart. He's West Coast, I'm East Coast. So that 8 hours also accounts for that. And you pause it overnight as well. Obviously, it's not night for everybody at the same time, but just having no clock running, like you can still make picks. You're just not technically on the clock. Definitely helps out as well. And that's going back to the commissioner just being on their P's and Q's, making sure that's all set up at all times, making sure that the clock pauses so people don't get auto picked at 2 a.m. And just I don't know, basic common courtesy to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to make the picks and everybody has the same 8 hours if they really need that time.
Yep, exactly. All right, so we talked a little bit about trading. I think this is the really really important aspect. And in the startup draft, you can trade your draft pick. So let's say you have the first pick overall, right? And you want to trade back, which is a strategy that I encourage very strongly. You can trade that first round pick for like someone's second round pick plus their like third round pick or something like that, which would be a really really good return, right? But you can also trade for future rookie picks. So the future rookie picks would be like the 2022 rookies. We don't know. I mean, I know who they are, but most people don't know who they are yet. But you can get those picks so that when the rookie draft comes around next year, you kind of have those picks in hand. And the one key thing I want people to really understand though is a future rookie pick, like a 2022 first, is nowhere close in value to a startup first round pick. Because if you think about the startup, it has all the players, all the best players, the CMCs and everything. But the future rookie drafts only have the incoming rookie class, right? So, if you think about this class, you can probably name like 10, 15 really good players, right? But after that, once you get the third and fourth round, you're basically throwing darts or putting a blindfold on. So, one mistake I see people make often, and someone did it in the BBB league by accident, is they gave up like their startup third, or it was Gabe.
I remember
God
when it
bless
went
Gabe.
through. You know what you did? He's like, yeah, I accepted. I'm like, you gave up a rookie pick, I think you gave up like a third and a fifth
Yeah.
startup for like a late first rookie pick. I'm like, that's a little tough. And he's like, oh, yeah, I thought it was an actual like a startup first.
Yeah.
That trade goes from like, it's not too bad, I guess, but like maybe a Jalen Rager for like not a Kareem Hunt, a Keenan Allen and a Cortland Sutton, instead of it being like a Cortland Sutton and Keenan Allen for a not Jonathan Taylor, a Saquon Barkley or somebody else like that. Like
Yeah.
it changes it a
Yeah, it
ton.
changes the dynamics. So and it's for sleeper, it's super confusing because so you got to make sure you really pay attention for that. But in terms of trading, and it's the best part, obviously. But in terms of setting up your league and how to like allow for that and protect your league, Noah brought it up before. But the way I do it is if you trade a future rookie pick, you pay for that year in advance because nobody wants to take over an orphan with no rookie picks because there's no way to fucking turn around. It's a fucking dumpster, and you're not going to be able to find a replacement owner if that team orphans. So at the bare minimum, you need to make them pay so that you can give that team away for free.
You do
So that's
full
how you do it.
payment for that year?
So I do. So the way I set up is when you set the league, you usually pay for the year and 50% of next year, right?
Mhm.
So then when you trade the next year's pick, you just pay the remaining 50%.
Okay.
So
In
that way
my
you
leagues,
have
I
like two
just
full
keep
years.
it as the 50, and then the new owner only pays 50% for that year.
Yeah. So the way I do it is like if you trade a pick, like in our BBB league, everyone that traded picks, and trust me, everyone traded picks in our BBB league. Like there was a million fucking trades. Everyone's paid through to like 2023 in that league, like or something like that. So every time you trade a pick, make sure you get that payment before that you allow that trade, just so people don't like go all in and then fail and then bounce because that's the worst way. And as a commissioner, it's a pain, and the league usually folds. That's why like most dynasty leagues only last like 1.5 years, like on average, right? Because people just fold and they don't have these types of rules and mechanisms in place to help protect them. So usually make sure they pay 1.5 times entry. So if if your entry is $100, get them to pay 150, and then if they trade next year's rookie pick, get them to pay another 50, and then now you got both years paid in. So if that team fucks up, you can give it away for free, no problem. So that's how we deal with trading in the startup drafts and timing there. So that's honestly the most fun and the probably the reason why most people play Dynasty. If you guys are new and you guys get into it, trust me that you will not find greater thrills than that outside of NBA Top Shot, which we learned more recently. But outside of that, like if you compare redraft to Dynasty, is no contest. Just the amount of trades you can get done. But you just got to make sure you set up your league and you're well protected to account for those times.
Yeah, and I think that's I don't know, it seems like all the fundamentals that I can think of for like how to start a dynasty league aside from just like what dynasty is. And I think if you're here, you probably already know what it is. It's just like a full year-round type of commitment. It's kind of crazy. It's like being married to fantasy football, which is probably better than being married to a wife that won't sleep with you. But yeah, it's just it's fun. It gets you invested. Rookie drafts come around, you start to realize that you're scouting 18-year-old kids and you're like, what am I doing in my free time? You're trying to make money, baby. And that's what we're all about here. But I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to cover in terms
Yeah.
of Dynasty.
I think just the last thing that I'll say is set up a chat. So whether it's GroupMe, whether it's Slack, whether it's Discord, which is like the new bumping thing now. Like I set up Slacks for most of my leagues because it's just a good way to kind of like notify everyone. Like Sleeper, I have muted, so like I don't get any notifications, and it's hard to get like communications through there. But if you have a Slack set up, you can post like your bylaws in there. You can post pin all your like league safe payments in there. You can have different channels for like trade bait. You can have all these different things. So that's why I really like Slack and Discord. You can kind of like separate those chats and have people, and like you can DM them, and it's an easy way to keep track of your leagues, right? Because you'll have like 4 or 5 Slacks or 4 or 5 Discords, and they'll correspond. Each one will correspond to one of your leagues. So it's just a great way to set up Dynasty because it is a trading game, and it is live all season, all off season, 365. There is no off season in Dynasty really. So you want to have a good way to keep communications open, and the leagues that fail to have activity, that ones that I've experienced is ones that don't take the effort to set up that extra chat and keep things engaging. So make sure you guys do that. That would be the last tip that I have in terms
Yeah,
of setting
going
things
back
up.
to that marriage correlation, like bad communication, bad relationship. You just need to keep talking. You got to keep the sparks flying, and you got to keep trading, because trading is what keeps Dynasty alive, and that's why it's more fun to us than a seasonal league. Because seasonal league, you have 16 weeks to make a mistake. Dynasty, you got forever, and you got forever to try to make up for those mistakes. So, yeah, it's for the risky, it's for the risk averse, it's for everybody. It's for frauds, it's for touts, it's for everybody. It's a whole lot of fun. If you're getting in, I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you never look back and join a new redraft league ever again.
Yes, sir. All right. If you guys enjoyed that, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, stick with us. You will get Dynasty content all season long. We have like 3, 4, sometimes 5 pieces coming out on a weekly basis. And then, as mentioned before, if you're into NBA Top Shots, or if you want to learn how to get into NBA Top Shots, make sure you subscribe as well. We'll be putting out that video later this week. We decided to record closer to the day of, so we can have a really quick turnaround, just given how fast market prices move and how fast market dynamics change. So we want to get you guys that information as soon as possible. So make sure you guys subscribe, and that's all we got for you guys this week. See you next week.
Peace.